morning and welcome to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Kelp Forest live cam. As you can see, Patrick is in position and the most popular creature in our exhibit this morning. Now, a special shout out to everyone who's watching on social media. This is a really great opportunity for you to connect with us, send in your questions, and get those answered by Patrick, who is incredibly knowledgeable. Patrick, how are you this morning?
Hey, how's it going there? Outside the window. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm doing good. Hey, thank you so much for the intro. And hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in right now on the Monterey Bay Aquarium's website, as well as on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube, Periscope. Actually, sorry, if the folks are not on Twitch, if you're over on Twitch, you're going to be seeing the sea otter cam right now because we are in the middle of Sea Otter Awareness Week. So actually right now, there's an enrichment happening with some of the sea otters, but we're here to do a little bit of a feeding over here. If you've had too much otter in your life, I know it can be a little bit otter-whelming out there, all the otter content that we put out there during Sea Otter Awareness Week, so we're here to do this feeding show. So hello to Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube, and then if you're tabbing over from Twitch, hello as well. Hello to the aquarium website. But yeah, Jonathan, it's time for me to, I'm the DoorDash guy for these animals here, so let's get going with some feeding.
Now, Patrick, it is Sea Otter Awareness Week, and while there are no otters present in this exhibit,
yes,
this exhibit is a natural habitat for otters.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, we talk about sea otters, and I feel like the kelp are just, you know, sea otters and kelp, they go together just like a rock and a clam on a sea otter's belly, you know. And we don't have any sea otters in this exhibit. That's often a question that we get at the aquarium is, you know, why don't we have sea otters in here? And the reason for that is that sea otters are incredibly inquisitive. They're very dexterous. They're very good with their paws, and they are just very excited about any opportunity to go look for food, and that just translates to pure destruction, otter chaos, as it were, if we ever had some sea otters in this exhibit here. So the otters, if you visited the aquarium, are over by the main entrance, but in the wild, of course, off the back deck of the aquarium, we have a whole host of sea otters, rafts of sea otters hanging out off the back deck all the time, wrapped up in that kelp canopy. And sea otters are a top predator in that kelp forest environment. They are so crucial for maintaining the balance of everything in this community by feasting on so many invertebrates, animals without backbones, and in particular sea urchins, abalone, crabs, and the like out there in the kelp forest.
Now, Patrick, talking about top predators, one of the viewers on social media had a question for us. They're curious about what you're feeding the fish, and is it diverse? Is it a diversity of food?
Absolutely, yeah, great question. Yeah, so what we've got in this bucket right now is a little bit of a chopino, kind of a catch-all of different bits of food that we have at the aquarium available to the animals. We've got some krill in this little bucket. You folks out there may know that krill is a favorite whale food, and there have actually been blue whales and such along the coast of California here that love to feed on krill, you may know, but krill is also food for anything with a mouth big enough to eat krill. It's hard times in the ocean if you're a krill because something has probably just eaten you or is about to eat the thing that just ate you. So you're very basal to that food web if you're krill out there in the ocean. And we've also got some clam, chopped up fish in the smaller food mouth bucket, and then in the larger mouth bucket over here, I've got some squid, some shrimp, some fish for the sharks, the sheephead, and the other larger fish that may come by, like this fish right there, for the leopard shark.
Now, one of our guests had a question about those sharks right there. They said they'd like to pat that shark. People often ask, Patrick, isn't it all scary to be swimming with these leopard sharks?
That's actually my favorite part of the feeding. What's scarier is all of the senoritas, the cigar-shaped fish above me, the orange ones. Those ones have teeny tiny little teeth that love to peck at stuff, and I'm more concerned about them trying to give me a little bit of exfoliation around my mask, of them nipping on my face. The leopard sharks you see in front of you, they're just little puppy dogs coming up to say hello. In the wild, every time I've seen a leopard shark, they wanted nothing to do with my bubbly personality, so it's actually really awesome to have these sharks actually come up so I can get a closer look at them. Not something that would happen in the wild. And as you can see, very well behaved, just going along the front of the window there. Just try to aim the fish there for the mouthy part, as we had a voracious black surf perch there try to nab the food away from me. That's more what I'm concerned about, is these smaller mouths out there trying to attack my fingers.
Now, we do feed these fish normally when we're open. We feed them twice a day, 7 days a week.
Yes.
That schedule changed slightly here while we're closed, but we do feed them on a regular basis. Someone else had a couple of questions. There's a question about individual fish around you, which we'll cover as we go, Patrick. But they also asked about feeding techniques. In addition to hand feeding, we also do a broadcast feed, right?
We do, yeah. A broadcast feed is for all the smaller mouths that don't want to come over to this big, imposing figure that is me over here in the middle with where the sharks are hanging out. So I've got my buddy, Jamie, who's making sure I've got air and that the comms are working, connected to me at the other end of this hose. If I pull hard enough, we might see a big splash up there. That's Jamie. And Jamie has a bucket of krill to feed out to the anchovies and the kelp perch and other smaller mouths that may not be as interested in coming over here. So we are hand feeding these animals enough that they are able to come over and grab food when they're hungry, and then they kind of hang off the back when they're not as hungry. They, being cold-blooded animals, or the term being poikilotherm, which is just a word of the day there, where they're the same temperature as the water that they are in. So if the water increases in temperature, they increase in temperature, and they might get more active as they warm up. And if it's colder, kind of slow down a little bit as they get colder as well. So these animals don't need as much food as we do every day to maintain our internal body heat. So that's how it all kind of works out here. We got the big male sheephead here. Come and take a look, Jonathan. I'm going to see if I can get a prawn out there for it. There you go, buddy. Yes. That is a fish. You definitely do not want to have your fingers around their jaw. That whole head there is all muscle that it would use. There you go, little squid for you. That huge head that you can see there is all muscle to have huge bite force to be able to crush sea urchins, crabs, and lobsters out there in the wild. So.
Now, we do have a lot of teachers and students watching today. We are in a virtual world, Patrick. I know you and I have talked about this, the influence as children of wanting to do something like this. You have a beautiful story of really desiring to be someone who works with the ocean, and now you're here. And so I want to get a shout out, and if you don't mind, also to every single student, every teacher out there who's dreaming and hoping that one day they can do their dreams, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll part my way to the window here. Hey, everybody who's in school right now in these very, very difficult, challenging times for education. I just want to let you all know that when I was 5 years old, I saw the sea otters here at the aquarium and decided that I was going to be a marine biologist and work here. But I grew up in the foothills of the French Alps and in the suburbs of Stockholm, Sweden. There's not a whole lot of ocean activity going on in my life until I was able to go off to college over at UC Santa Cruz across the way. And that's when I started my trajectory into the ocean. Was just about 10 years ago. Actually, I just celebrated my 11th year as a volunteer here at the aquarium. But I didn't start early. I kind of started later. But I always knew that I wanted to make the ocean a part of my life. So for everybody out there currently going through these very difficult distance learning and, having college and high school opportunities, middle school opportunities, really very different than what they probably anticipated. Just know that you can start from the mountains and wind up doing a feeding show for all of you folks out there tuning in at the aquarium. Just got to keep walking forward as you see those steps in front of you. Sometimes it's hard to tell where the path is going, but each little step can bring you close and face to face with a shark.
I want to build on what you're saying, Patrick, because 4 people came together. Those are our founders. 4 people had a dream of building a kelp forest. And now millions of people's lives have been changed by those 4. So if any student out there, you have 3 friends in your life, imagine what the 4 of you can accomplish. Now, there's some questions about the Kelp Forest Exhibit. I want to say that this is not connected to the ocean. However, it is drawing water directly from the ocean, right, Patrick?
Yes, yeah. So if you're ever watching our Monterey Bay Cam, you might see some buoys that hang out there in the kelp forest, and in line with those buoys, you'll see our intake pipe buoys if you're off the back deck of the aquarium, and they are situated about 60 feet deep off the back deck here, pumping in around 2,000 gallons of water per minute for the whole system coming into the aquarium, about 1,500 gallons directly into this Kelp Forest Exhibit. And so we're very fortunate to be located right there next to the wild ocean. We're actually the only aquarium in North America that is situated directly on the sea like that, not on a harbor or on a protected little bay of water. So we're able to go out there and get that raw seawater, unfiltered. So at night, this kelp forest can sometimes be very, very murky as we let all the plankton and spores and larvae of other organisms just hang out in here with that raw seawater. And man, the sheephead is really hungry today. You saw him miss the fish multiple times in a row there, and let's see, there you go. Oh, squid, yes, very easy to go after.
Now that sheephead has just got asked about online. That is the orange, black, and white fish. That's the one Patrick's talking about with that very strong mouth. It's called a sheephead. You can get more information on our website about that. Now, Patrick, because the water comes directly from the bay into this exhibit, we do have to do maintenance on the kelp in the exhibit itself, correct?
We do, yes. So we have actually, you might see behind me right now, we're going to call them out right there. Take a look at one of our staff here. That could be Kelsey, I think. She's moving some kelp plants around in here. We're doing a lot of work in here. So if you saw some bubbles a little bit earlier, doing a lot of maintenance, making sure everything looks good, moving kelp plants around so that we can keep the whole of the exhibit looking just as natural as possible. And it takes a whole team. It takes lots of volunteer divers. If you watch the Kelp Forest Cam throughout the week, you probably see other volunteer divers coming in here cleaning the windows. We're also trimming the kelp. In the growing season, it can grow about 4 inches in a day, which can crowd out the exhibit. That kelp then goes to feed the other organisms that we have at the aquarium, urchins and abalone that might be hungry for some kelp. And so we basically are kind of acting like the sea otters in this exhibit, as it were, making sure that everything is looking good. Excuse you. My goodness. No, no. Okay, yes, turn around. Let me just.
So right there,
patient.
Patrick, that shark.
So you just saw exactly what I've pointed out every time during a feeding show, and I'm glad everybody got to see it. So just then, I had my fingers inside the shark's mouth, and the uncomfortable part was that its teeth got a little bit caught on my glove. Yes, they did. And they're just like Velcro, so I just felt basically Velcro close down around my fingers, and then it's just like, are you really going to get stuck right now? And so that's really the main consideration when you're hand feeding the sharks, is to make sure they don't get stuck on your finger. And you got to see there, everybody, what typically happens with me in any aquarium circumstance, where I'm just getting carried away talking, having a good time, and then eventually the person that is right next to me is just like, okay, I just need you to give up that piece of shrimp and I can move on. So yeah, this is basically like if the pizza guy invited himself into your house to tell you how the pizza was made. At some point you've overstayed your welcome, and you got to see that live. That was fun.
Well, I'm glad you didn't grow up to become a pizza delivery person, but instead this right here, Patrick. Now those sharks right in front of you, the one with the Velcro teeth, those are leopard sharks. Someone was asking about what kind of shark. It's a leopard shark, a beautiful animal, puppy dog of the sea. Now speaking of eating out of your hand, how do you, one, know every shark is being fed enough, and two, do these sharks eat each other, Patrick?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, so you can kind of tell how some of the sharks are either very ornery and feel like they've not been fed enough, as we just saw with that individual, or the other sharks are swimming off a little bit more lazily now. One of them is actually taking a little bit of a nap in the corner. So you can see how their attitude changes from swimming up here along the window to swimming maybe down a little bit lower, not as hungry anymore. So that's how you can really tell individually there. And then, you know, what you're seeing right now is not only just fun for us to be able to educate folks about our exhibit, about the animals that are in here online. This is also an important part of the health and safety of these animals here. Hand feeding the leopard sharks like that, make sure that they get enough food directly so that they're not hungry enough to go after their smaller tank mates in here. Same thing with all of these fish, and actually, you know, the sharks are probably the most apparent predator in here if you are familiar with the biology, but actually down here below me, we've got a whole bunch of rockfish, and these rockfish right here have huge mouths that they would use to swallow up other smaller fish, you know, including the anchovies that we have in here. So we've got a lot of predators surrounding me. They just may not look like your typical predator you see on TV. And by feeding everybody enough like this, we make sure that we keep the peace, but also having predators and prey in the same exhibit like this is a really good way to make sure that these animals have natural behaviors, natural reactions. They get to practice their normal everyday instincts, which helps keep them mentally healthy and physically healthy here at the aquarium. But obviously, we try to intervene and feed everybody enough so that they don't play that out on exhibit.
And out of those founders and the people who make this aquarium possible, having the diversity of predator and prey was incredibly important.
Yes.
They wanted to show habitat, which means the home, rather than the individual animal, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you may notice when you see the aquarium's exhibits, when you walk through, is that it's set up a little bit differently than other places. We're all about community, ecosystem, habitats, animals coexisting together, because you can't have the kelp forest without every part of that kelp forest, from the bryozoans living on the kelp blade all the way up to the sea otter wrapped up in the surface, and all the way down to the abalone and urchins on the bottom in that understory of kelp. It's a huge community that all works together, all having its own parts that come together to form that big whole. Every animal has its own niche, and we want to represent that here at the aquarium. That's very similar to our way of talking about inspiring conservation of the ocean, where everybody out there that's tuning in right now, that's watching this, Kelp Forest Cam, you have your own niche in your community. You contribute to that larger whole, while also having that smaller world that you're focused on every day. And when we're all working together to help protect the environment in our own individual way, whether that's by, registering to vote, you probably heard that somewhere on the internet recently, to working in your community to help support legislation that might set up marine protected areas like we have out here off the coast, or if you're inland, protecting resources for the future generations. Those are all things that we can do at a small scale and a large scale all at once, and that's pretty much what happens here in the kelp forest. You've got what this striped perch is doing every day that ends up contributing to everything you see here behind me. So the small scale, big scale, all together, that's what the kelp forest is all about, and how we live out our mission of ocean conservation out there too.
I can't stress enough of what Patrick's saying, how important it is, how strong an individual is when they join with other people who have the same beliefs as them. Now, speaking of the community, we do have some fish that aren't on camera right now. Just below Patrick are our garibaldi, which is the marine state fish. They're a bright orange fish.
Bright orange fish, yep.
Then right above him, there are a bunch of silver anchovies that are floating up there in a school. Now, are we going to feed them as well, Patrick?
We are, yeah. So the anchovies, you may see there's a little bit of, behind me actually, there's a few anchovies because there's some kicked up muck there from the back from the work that we're doing. So you'll see the anchovies get fed by that krill that Jamie had on the surface, and also by little bits of food here and there. And especially, there's a lot of fish in here. There's a lot of fish poop for them to feed on as well. I don't know if I can lure a garibaldi up, but there is one right below me here. Bright orange damselfish. One of the few fish that's actually bit me in the wild is a garibaldi off the Channel Islands. And do you happen to know where the term garibaldi comes from, Jonathan?
I don't. Where does it come from?
Some of the history buffs out there may know that there's a famous Italian general that helped found Italy named Giuseppe Garibaldi, and his troops wore red coats that look very much like that right there. So that's where the term Garibaldi comes from. It's related to Giuseppe Garibaldi, and that's our California state marine fish there, named after the orange-red attire of those Italian troops from, I want to say it's the 16th century, but I'm not exactly sure, maybe 17th. Long time ago. Anyway, fun fact.
Well, I want to give a shout. That's great. That's why I think teachers and parents, I myself have 2 young kids on virtual schooling, so to tune in and have Patrick's wisdom. Speaking of kids at home, Patrick, Grace wrote in. She's 9 years old. She'd like to know if there are any sea urchins in the exhibit as well.
Hello, Grace, 9 years old. Thank you so much for the great question. And I'll make sure to answer it urgently. We do have a lot of urchins in here. We have large red sea urchins that are hanging out on the lower part of this reef. Some of these urchins have been here since the aquarium opened. One thing about sea urchins is that we really don't know how old they can get. We know that there are potential reports of red sea urchins over 200 years old. We know that purple urchins can live probably to 100 pretty easily. They can live a very long time without food. They're very resilient. They're kind of the kelp forest reckoning, if you think about it. They're basically a perfect foil to how quickly kelp can grow and how imposing it is as an individual species. But yeah, we have big urchins in here. but they are not a problem because they have plenty of drift kelp to feed on. One of the things that happens with kelp forests is that when there's not enough kelp, the urchins get hungry and start marauding around, going after basically anything they can find to eat, and that's when you have a problem. If you have plenty of kelp, the urchins are very calm and satiated. They are relaxed in their little corner, and they don't crawl out and eat everything. So in this exhibit, it's a perfect environment for an urchin to live a very, very long, happy, healthy urchin life.
Now, in the wild, the thing that keeps the urchin population down is the
sea otter.
That's right. Let's talk a little bit about Sea Otter Week.
Yeah, and it's the sea otter as well as the rest of the community. It's something that we're really finding out here along the coast, is that sea otters help with urchins under specific circumstances, and you really need every character from sheephead to sunflower sea stars, wolf eels, lobster. There's so many species that eat urchins out here, and people have eaten urchins along the coast here for thousands of years as well. You may know uni from sushi. And so those urchin populations are controlled by a lot of different things. Sea otters are a very famous example of that. We know that sea otters up in Alaska in the 70s were eating urchins, which was helping the kelp rebound. And it's a very complex system everywhere, and so that's why it's so important to talk about sea otters being critical to the kelp forest. They're also critical to seagrass environments by just doing what they're doing, by otters eating as many crabs as they do in the eelgrass, by eating as many urchins as they do in the kelp forest. They help promote the fundamental building block of the ecosystem, being the kelp, being the eelgrass. And that's pretty much what we can all aspire to do as well in the Sea Otter Awareness Week. I'm sure everybody out there is donating to fire funds, to community funds everywhere to help everybody out in these difficult times. And that little contribution that you're doing right now, just doing what you're doing your job, doing your work at home, taking care of the kids, helping do the at-home education, everything we've had to do in this very difficult time, all of that ends up being just doing what we're doing. It impacts the rest of the community all around us as we're all contributing. So I just want to encourage everybody out there that you are a sea otter in your world. You may not even realize how much impact you have on everybody around you. Keep up the great work. Sea otters nap a third of the day, so I want to give you that encouragement and opportunity to nap a third of the day if you need it as well, because you're a sea otter in your environment, doing what you're doing, helping the rest of the community around you grow and thrive, just as everyone else is doing what they're up to.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your passion, your insights. So everyone watching at home, you are the sea otter. You are the change that the world needs. We have programs all throughout the day. Today at 1:30, we'll have our next sea otter training session.
Yep.
Please tune in Monday through Friday. You'll see penguins, otters, the kelp forest. It is so important that you do follow us on social media. Subscribe when possible, because we want to be able to reach out to you. We're closed right now. We don't have the ability to talk to you face to face. But social media is our opportunity to have a conversation with you, and
Absolutely.
that's what we want more than anything else. Patrick, as I wrap up, you have anything?
Oh, just thank you so much, everybody who supported the aquarium through over 6 months of closure now. We really appreciate everybody donating to the aquarium as you have. We want to give a huge shout out to all the members who watched the live member night that occurred last night. It was all about sea otters. Sign up for you folks out there who may not be financially able to donate. If you sign up for our email or for our social media, you can stay in touch with us and help support us by sharing our message with everybody. But I just wanted to say thank you for everybody over these many months together while we've been away. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being a part of Team Ocean. And I guess I just got to plug it, Jonathan. Just remember to register to vote. Look at the website. We've got plenty of stuff over there. You know what to do. We're here if you have any questions. Thank you so much for being a part of that ocean-minded community.
Thank you, everyone, and please stay tuned on these live cams, because you never know what's going to happen with these animals. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.